Would you watch a show where a billionaire CEO has to go an entire month on their lowest paid employee's salary, without access to any other resources than that of the employee? What do you think would happen? It would be incredibly self-serving and boring. They would never truly experience what it is like to be in the precarious position of a minimum wage employee living hand to mouth, and the novelty is just salt in the wound. It would be more interesting to see the reverse. It's more than just the money. It's the lack of security these people endure. Not knowing if you'll lose your job tomorrow and having no savings. Being kicked out of your home. An unexpected bill you can't afford, which may lead to increasing debt. Putting these rich people in a poor lifestyle for a month isn't enough. Even if they lost their money and homes, they'll have such a huge net worth that they'll be back on their feet in the time it takes for us peons to earn enough to eat for a week. They can never truly understand what it's like to be poor or ever face that reality again. So what would happen? It'd be a completely self-serving advert about how now I realize that we need to do more for our employees. The workers get a small vanity bonus, probably give an immigrant worker with limited English a car, pat themselves on the back. Then 2 weeks later, we've all forgotten about the show and they'll go back to their old ways. Lots of rich people voluntarily go on vacation to third world countries. The catch is, they know they have a way out and an end date. I'd be interested to watch a show where the CEO had to personally be financially responsible for the welfare of 50% of their lowest paid employees for 10 years, and their net growth percentage equaled their bonus every year, with a big bonus if both the company and the employees were profitable at the end. I'd do more than a month and without any contact to rich buddies either. If it's a month, I think a lot would just buy rice and beans every day and go see. It's super easy to be poor. You just need to make economical choices. I've proven myself right. Longer than that, and they'll really have to get used to how their lowest paid employees live. Would they learn a lesson? Maybe. Likely not. They still have a mansion to come back home to. They'll give their lowest paid people a one-time bonus, or maybe they'll drag one out in front of a camera to give them a fancy car so their own reputation gets better. And then they won't change anything else. You should watch Undercover Billionaire on Discovery, not to be confused with Undercover Boss. Billionaire Glenn Stearns moves to Erie, Pennsylvania with just $100, a truck, and no contacts, and has to make a company valued at $1 million in 90 days. He also can't mention who he is to anyone. It's pretty much exactly like you are describing, and insanely entertaining. They would just treat it as a novelty since they know they will be getting their billions back at the end of the month. They wouldn't have to truly live like a person does who lives hand to mouth every day of their lives. They wouldn't really learn anything from it. In fact, they would probably look back on it and laugh. Oh, remember when we had to eat that can of ravioli, ha? They would have to swap everything down to the last detail. Apartment, car, if they even have one, wardrobe, food, hobbies, etc. And it would have to be ongoing, not just a couple months. The real question is, how to get a CEO to agree to this. I'll be a contrarian here and say that I bet they would be able to thrive. Usually, the CEO of a company got to that position because they are an uber-talented human, obvious exceptions excluded. I think a CEO would be able to manage their resources effectively and make it work. I know this is hard to fathom for the Reddit stupid hate train for the rich, but most of them are smarter and worked harder than you when they were younger, which is why they are in the place that they are in now and you're not. So I imagine they'll manage just fine. I think they'd get along just fine. It'd probably be a bit of a lifestyle adjustment for that month, but not something they'd be incapable of. They themselves have, in all likelihood, lived that lifestyle as they were coming up, maybe while in college or fresh out of it. Very few CEOs just waltz into the role without first having come up from lower ranks. This has already been a movie in the 80s. Trading Places with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. Of course it's fiction and played for comedic effect, but I think if you strip away the laughs it probably wouldn't be too far from the truth. Gwyneth Paltrow did what she called a food stamp challenge a few years back to prove that you could eat healthily on just that much for a month. I think it took her less than a week to give up. It would be turned into an emotionally manipulative show about the struggles of the common worker, where at the end of every episode the one worker would get some extravagant gift and a raise. The CEO would be painted as some sort of hero of the people, all while they continue to pay 99% of their employees just above poverty wages. Hard to imagine a CEO not making something good out of it. They aren't the average brain-dead poor person that have no gumption or will to improve their lot. They are a CEO for a reason and could likely move into a similar position without their bona fides. They would probably do okay at least. Many of these guys have CEO characteristics, organizational behavior, they understand finances, saving, investing, budgeting, and are generally quite disciplined. Not everyone has these traits. Since they would be on minimum wage, does that mean they would be allowed to live with parents rent-free while they attend public schools for free, with the only expenses they'd have to worry about is a weekend out with their friends? I think the only thing would happen is the CEO would use that to convince themselves that they're a selfless person willing to put themselves in their workers' shoes, and then go back to their multi-million-dollar mansion. Starting them with a job is starting them with a huge advantage. They should have started unemployed and in an applicant pool with no connections, a bachelor's degree from an unrecognizable college or university, $25,000 in student loan debt, and less than 3 to 5 years of experience working in the field. Yeah, actually. You'd have to get medieval making sure they don't cheat. You could go to companies and swap their worst and best paid employees round. What would happen? A lot of them would die. They would be swapping places with someone who lives in a very different part of town and they would stick out like a billionaire in Compton. They would be surprised to discover how little time they have left once they have to commute, possibly get the kids from school, shop, cook, tidy up, etc. I think some would discover they like having neighbors. They would all talk about raising the wages of the least well-paid, then none of them would actually do it. It's amazing how people on Reddit think these guys got their positions for no good reason and don't know how to work hard. With that being said, what would be their motivation to do something like this? A lot of incredibly wealthy people are actually very sensible with money, hence why they're rich, so I doubt it would be a particularly exciting show. Every politician should be required to do this. The exact same thing that happens on Undercover Boss would happen. They'll push through it temporarily for the publicity and then change nothing about the company. She would cheat. A month is too short, make it 3 months to really understand the predicament. Even if they managed a month, it wouldn't represent the once every couple years car surprise or medical surprise or housing issue. My dad was telling me about a show where a millionaire has a jet drop him off in some state with only $100 in his pocket and he tries to turn it into some money. He ends up sleeping in his car for some nights because he didn't realize how much, or in this case, how little, $100 gets you. They should also have to do that employee's job, so they know exactly how much their work is valued. I'd watch it as long as it's actually real and not one of those staged reality shows. It would be interesting to watch. I think the billionaire would be in charge of the show and all that goes on. You know how Bear Grylls pretends to survive in the wild but actually stays in resort hotels with fine dining every night? It would be just like that. They would probably be like Gwyneth Paltrow when she tried the food stamp challenge and failed after only 4 days. Kyle Ren did this already. I remember a show with a very similar idea. Yes, I would love a show like that, as long as they are housed in a setting that equals about half of their net pay, for rent and utilities, which will come out of their weekly pay before the show starts to house them, based upon half of their net income. I have paid up to 65% at times. The producers will have to find them an apartment share or one room to rent somewhere that is paid for beforehand for the length of the show. And if they can't afford car payments and insurance out of the remainder of their net income, they have to use public transportation or a bicycle or walk or ride share, etc. to get back and forth to work, grocery shopping, etc. And being able to afford a cell phone is out of the income also, can be a part of their utility expenses, if they can afford it. In other words, NO enabling. The notion of that appeals to me for sure. How they present it depends on who's behind it probably. You let him go 6 months and watch how he became CEO in the first place. To be honest, they would probably be fine. I'd watch it only if the experience would lead to the CEO being so traumatized that they immediately raise everyone's wages afterwards, bankrupting the company in the process and leading to everyone having no wages at all. 1 month will not be indicative. For at least 6 months, then yes, it's interesting. You know, I heard that there is such a form of entertainment for very rich people. It is also expensive, because they are watched by a security group and they will intervene if something threatens their life. They are dressed up as homeless people and for some time they lead such a lifestyle. This is their extreme. He would find a way to be more successful because you have to face the fact that a billionaire CEO has a different mindset than the lowest paid employee. He will not accept this fate and use his qualities to achieve unexpected results. I'd watch it. Being an expert businessman or woman, I'm sure they'd have $25 an hour by the end of it. The hardest part of being poor is knowing it's not going to get better. Anyone can tough it out for a month. I mean, I'd love it, but what are the odds that a CEO is going to do that for a month? What would they have to gain? I just can't imagine any CEO being part of a show for over a month. Imagine the time that costs. Depends. Who profits from the show? If it's someone like Warren Buffett, nothing would change. A month wouldn't be enough, they should have to do it for at least 6 months or so. It's also more fair to them to adjust to such a life. Probably not. I truly believe that you have to completely lack empathy and many other emotions that make us human in order to become a billionaire. My only hope for the show would be to open the eyes of these leeches and get them to change, and I don't foresee that happening. It would all feel like a gimmick and another shameless cash grab for an unethical, fascist billionaire douche. I bet the CEO would still pull themselves up by their bootstraps and work it out. I think the CEO would go back to their privileged life and say that person should have gone to college or made better choices. Basically tough for them. I'd be afraid that they'd succeed in quickly getting ahead, because one of the biggest challenges poor people face is lack of information/education. Billionaire CEO would probably work more hours and more efficiently and rise through the ranks quicker because of it. You don't just get to be a CEO, it takes hard work to build a company or become CEO of an existing company, and you also need to be quite intelligent and good with money. All things most people are not. Including myself. I'd watch it. It will make scandal after scandal. The CEO have to be from a wealthy family from the start. Putting people from modest upbringing will have less results. They would probably double or triple their income in 3 months easy. They have a giant network and skills to prevail. They mostly have the drive of 10 normal people. I think they'd get 2 more jobs because working only 8 hours a day would feel weird to them, and they'd be the boss in the other 2 jobs before the end of the first month. Reddit, so precious you think that would faze any self-made billionaire? He'd probably come out of it with a new product he could sell and another million in his pocket. I would absolutely love that. Most CEOs are narcissistic sociopaths, this would not change them. 1 year minimum, and as long as they also have to spend the time working for the pay too. Can't just be given to them. Make it 1 year. At least. I think they would find a way to cheat and go on Fox News the day after and tell everyone that we just need to pick ourselves up by the bootstraps like he did. 1 month does not matter. He or she knows it's all over in 30 days, then it's back to champagne wishes and caviar dreams. It would be a hit. Bloomberg would then get 0% of the vote. The CEO should do the job on the same level with the lowest paid employee for 3 months. Not just the salary. So the CEO will notice how bad but important this job can be. Would watch it. There would be company-wide raises and the employees would be better understood and respected. I think this should be a thing as it may help open people's eyes. I'm Matt, I'm a radar technician. Plenty of rich people have started their life poor. I'd watch it on the condition that if they didn't make it through the entire thing they lost their job. It would be interesting, but it's kind of unfeasible because even if the billionaire is dirty poor, he would have still retained the contacts, the knowledge and experience that could help him get back to a somewhat comfortable position very much faster than other person. Also, there's no real risk. For instance, he might not have healthcare access, but the risk of dying, losing a limb or something is not real because the show producers would stop that from happening. No, I wouldn't watch it, but then again, I don't watch any of the so-called reality shows. There's a show called Rich House Poor House that pretty much does the same thing. Interesting stuff. Only if the twist at the end is that they're not getting their wealth back. One major issue is they still have the skills and knowledge of their privileged life. Regardless of the long-term effects or degrees, with the skills and knowledge they already have, they can jump ahead leaps and bounds. This means they won't learn a meaningful lesson. For example, I teach students who are well off, but many of their parents dislike or distrust modern tech. I have to teach them over and over how to make a copy of a Google Doc into their own drive. It's a basic skill a lot of us take for granted, but without the ability to navigate modern tech due to lack of opportunity and access, we don't learn it. The wealthy have those skills and will probably succeed regardless without learning anything but how the rest of the world has to live. wouldn't be the same. They could hold out no problem, safe in the knowledge that their top-tier lifestyle will return. When you are broke, with no future and no hope of a billionaire lifestyle, the depression kills you or the lack of food and Skylander collectibles. Opie got $1 million idea right here. Wasn't something similar on Discovery? I think it was called Undercover Billionaire. 12 months, and only if they can't get their money back if they are in the negative at the end of the 12 months until they get back into the positive. I think that they try to buy their way out of it. Yes, but no billionaire would agree to it. No CEO would sign up to be on the show. Everybody knows what is happening behind the scenes. It would be to have 24/7, however, that would be a breach of privacy. An entire year. They wouldn't make it past 3 weeks. Also, 3-month minimum. Would I watch reality TV show? No. No, I would not. What an awesome and not at all loaded question. Definitely not pandering to the Reddit hive mind at all. Is the billionaire CEO banned from using the salary of the lowest paid employees to start a business? Or, also, what if the CEO was a rags to riches story and he himself had worked such a job before? Yeah. Make them fill out online applications and interview for it, too. I remember watching a show once where they did something similar. Landlords had to swap with their tenants for a week and live on their budget. Some of the landlords couldn't make it an entire week. One couple struggled because they couldn't drink a 50-pound bottle of wine every night. I honestly think this would have the opposite effect that most would want to see. Being in this situation becomes more difficult as time goes on. Month after month of struggling takes a far bigger mental toll. You never seem to make any progress, and day to day you feel that as long as you can minimize the amount you fall back, that is the win. You throw someone in the ring of a company they know a good deal about, mentally fresh, and has the light at the end of the tunnel to get out? Think they'd be put in a situation that they could be more successful than the average person in the situation. Which would give more fire to pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. I am not saying that all CEOs would be better off, more that we would have a cherry-picked situation and that would be spun into minimum wage people are lazy. That being said, don't care for any reality TV and wouldn't watch this either. It's not really difficult if you know you only have to do it for a month, with no real financial burden from your family, and you can bail yourself out in case the going gets tough. Only if one of the lowest paid employees live like the billionaire for a month. Undercover boss. I would watch a show that proposed this to billionaire CEOs and just showed their excuses to refuse it. Because every CEO was born rich? A lot of these CEOs sacrificed everything to get their businesses going, which meant living off of zero money. Of course there are exceptions, trust fund babies. Someone kinda did something like this in an old poverty and inequality book/doc called Nickeled and Dimed. It would only be good if it was old money billionaires. If they're self-made, they'd probably be fine. Going an entire month is not the problem. The problem is the relentlessness of working poverty. You're already doing all the jobs you can, but it just isn't enough money. Sure, you can easily live a month of it or 2 or even 3, but it slowly wears you down. And you got no reserves. Anything happening out of the ordinary can break you. Getting sick, your car or fridge breaking, whatever. The UK had a show called Secret Millionaire. The rich dude had to live on benefits in some of the UK's poorest areas. After they spent time with the community, they would help those the most in need. Hopefully he'd have to do the cleaner's job, then after a week gets told the CEO outsourced facilities last month, so you're out of a job now. Then show 3 weeks of them trying sign on, visit a food bank and get evicted for missing an appointment with the DWP. I'd watch a show where we guillotine the billionaire CEOs.